Good morning, everyone. Welcome. The real star of the show is Will Chen. He's everything you'd ever want to know about food waste recycling. Will Chen can answer those questions. And we're going to give you a virtual tour of our food waste recycling program. And we want to make it as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions as we go along, either raise your hand or put it in the chat and we will answer it. So it's your tour, your opportunity. So with that, let's get going. Sanitation District was formed in 1923. Our mission is to protect public health and the environment through innovative and cost-effective wastewater management and solid waste management, and in doing so, convert waste into resources such as recycled water, energy, and recycled material. Um, Currently, we treat about 400 million gallons of sewage every day. We serve over half of LA County. 78 of the 88 cities in LA County discharge sewage to us. And into 10 to 12 hours, we convert that sewage into recycled water that you see here in the lower left part of the screen. This is essentially drinking water, and we supply that to over 950 sites. On our solid waste side, we manage a fourth of the county's trash. And when we get that trash, we're trying to recycle that as much as we can. So we have material recovery facility where we pull out the recyclable material, bail up those commodities, and sell them back in the recycled market. And then the third thing we do is convert waste into energy. We're one of the biggest producers of green energy, either on our wastewater side or our solid waste side, utilizing what we call anaerobic digestion. And that's why this food waste recycling thing fits neatly into what we can do. So let's backtrack. Why is food waste a big issue? So in LA County, I hope everyone can see the screen. It seems to be blocking. Hold on. In LA County generates 21 million tons of waste per year. Of that 21 million tons, about 9 million a year is buried into landfill, as such as you see here. Of the 9 million tons per year that's buried in landfill, about a third of that is organic waste, as you can see from this pie chart from Cal Recycle. Of that organic waste, about 4,000 tons per day is food waste. 4,000 tons per day is thrown, at least 4,000 tons per day of food waste is thrown out in LA County. And here's a shot of food waste at our Pointed Hills Material Recovery Facility. And that food waste, when it's disposed of in landfill, can release methane into the environment. There have been some studies recently looking at the planet, and they realized that food waste by itself generates about 6 to 8% of the methane in our atmosphere. And methane is a greenhouse gas that is far more disruptive than carbon dioxide. Some estimates have it from 50 to 80 times more disruptive in terms of climate change than carbon dioxide. So California, taking the lead, has passed a couple of laws. One is a number of laws, but we're going to focus on two. One is AB 1826 that requires mandatory commercial organics recycling. If an entity produced at least 4 cubic yards of waste per week, but last year, because we weren't meeting the targets, that number was lowered to 2 cubic yards of organic waste per week. So if you're a business or any entity that generates at least 2 cubic yards per week of organic waste, you have to have a mandatory organics recycling program. And the second law is SB 1383. This requires a reduction in landfill organics by 50% by last year, 2020, and we didn't meet those targets. And then 75% reduction in organics that are landfill by 2025. And part of this law requires that all cities in California, all jurisdictions in California have in place by January 2022, less than 12 months, an organics diversion, food waste diversion program. You know, because what the state's trying to do is move organics away from landfill to either composting or anaerobic digesting. And in terms of food waste, if the food waste could be donated, food can be donated to a food bank, that's the best thing to do. And what cannot be donated to a food bank, then they want to make sure it's either composted or anaerobically digested. So the districts are perfectly positioned with our wastewater side and solid waste side to help our member cities and businesses meet this. I'm trying to, I hope everyone can see. Seems, is the screen blocked for you, Will or
No,
Genesis?
it's fine. It's on the MRF and the joint plan.
Okay, but the top portion of the screen. All right. So our food waste program, recycling program, can help business and city. So on the solid waste side, we have the Point of Hills Material Recovery Facility. It's located at the 605 and 60 freeway. So it's got great freeway access. We opened that facility in 2005, and it's great freeway access to come in, drop off waste, and we try to recycle there. And then whatever we get at, if we get food waste at the MRF, we can convert that into a slurry and we take it to our joint plant in Carson. We have anaerobic digesters that you can put that food waste in, so it's hermetically sealed, so none of that methane escapes to the atmosphere. So with the two sides of our agency, our solid waste side, our wastewater side, we have the infrastructure, most of the infrastructure in place to help in terms of this organics or food waste diversion program. So let's take a closer look at our program. Our program really has three main steps. There's a pre-processing step where source separated food waste from a restaurant or a grocery store is turned into a slurry. That would occur at our Point of Hills MRF, and we'll take a closer look in the next couple of images. And then from there, the slurry goes into anaerobic digestion at our joint plant, our largest wastewater treatment plant in Carson, and that's right off the freeway as well. And then whatever's left from the anaerobic digestion, the solids, we post-treat that, we create fertilizer compost with it. So let's take a look at source separated food waste. This is collected from restaurants, grocery stores, and we're looking for stuff that's at least 90% organic material, 90% food waste. That's ideal stuff that we need, we'll collect. So food waste, a hauler will collect source separated food waste. They come to our Point of Hills Material Recovery Facility. They pull up to one of the scales. They pay about $70 a ton. And if you enter into some type of contract with the district, we could negotiate a discount as low as $60 a ton.
And can you briefly go over what anaerobic digesting is?
That's good. Basically, anaerobic digestion is when microorganisms that live in an oxygen-free environment start thriving. So we have, and so in the belly of a landfill or in our stomach, you get those kinds of anaerobic digestion. Those are microorganisms that live in an oxygen-free environment. They take over, they start consuming the organic material, and they give off gas such as methane and CO2. And I'll show you that, I'll explain that as we go further along. Thank you for the question, Genesis. So you pay your amount you pay your tipping fee at the scales, you drive into our MRF, and it's a truck going in, and you can notice on the left, baled recycled material, baled commodities that we've pulled out of the waste stream there. We can also pull out green waste. And whatever we can't pull out, we'll bale up, we'll put back in trucks and we'll landfill. But one of the newest things, and we've been doing it 5 or 6 years, is to the right, we have an area designated for source separated food waste, where we now process that in a slurry. And this is a great shot of our Point of Hills Material Recovery Facility. It was built in 2005. It's got a lot of green features. You notice the skylight to minimize our energy costs in terms of lighting. The building is completely enclosed. It's got freeway access. It has the equivalent, over 200,000 square feet of floor space. And here's what everyone came to see. So this is our area designated for food waste. So you see what we call, bear with me a second. This is our system. So in this area, we have our DOTA system where the food waste is fed into this and create a slurry. And presently we're taking about 30 tons per day of food waste that's converted into a slurry. This facility can handle up to 165 tons per day of food waste. And let's look at some inaugural video of the food waste, the DOTA system. So this food waste, you can see, even though this is source separated food waste, you can see that there's still contaminants in there. It's loaded into a hopper, and the hopper will feed into these bioseparators. Here's one of them. And think of them as motorized garlic press. It'll be fed into this chamber down here, and the material will be squeezed through openings, almost like I said, a garlic press. On one side of the opening, the organic material will come out, and what's left will be the plastics and the things that won't break down. And you can see it, the rejects coming out here, the big pieces of plastic. And then there's a second bioseparator that the slurry that went through, that was created with the first bioseparator, goes through another bioseparator with even smaller openings. So here's the rejects from the first bioseparator. Those are the plastics and maybe forks that made plastic forks in there. And then we'll see the finer rejects from the second bioseparator. So after it goes through these two kind of motorized garlic presses, this is the good stuff. Here's what the food waste slurry looks like. Typically, just by putting it through the bioseparator and our motorized garlic press, we get that kind of slurry consistency. But let's say the slurry is too dry, we can add water. And so we have a tank here that we can supply water if we want to liquefy it a little bit more. And so once we've created the slurry, we store it into 3 large containers. And then from there, a tanker truck operator comes periodically and collects the slurry in a tanker truck. And you can see in this driver's hand, he has a sample of the slurry, because every sample we put in our tanker truck to take over to our plant in Carson, we take a sample so we can make sure we understand what we're putting in our digesters, because we do not want to upset our digester. The truck then makes its way from the City of Industry, 605 and 60, to the City of Carson, where we have our Joint Water Pollution Control Plant, or what we call JWPCP. It's our largest wastewater treatment plant. And the truck then offloads into one of these slurry receiving stations that were recently completed. And what it'll do from here, once it's offloaded, it'll feed into what we call anaerobic digesters. And I will show you aerial footage of anaerobic digester. So that it gets put into the digester, the microorganisms produce biogas that we use for electricity, steam, vehicle fuel, and methane. So here's an aerial shot. Here are the digesters right here. They're set up just like our stomach. You have microorganisms that live in an oxygen-free environment, and they consume that organic material, and that's anaerobic digestion. And those microorganisms give off methane, CO2. So we mix that food waste slurry with wastewater solids. So part of the wastewater treatment, we remove solids from the wastewater. And so those two solids, those two waste streams are mixed in the anaerobic digester. And after about 15, 16 days, we remove what's left, and we also generate biogas. So we generate biogas and remove the solids that are left. So this is an inside look at our digesters. We have about 24 digesters. They're about 50 feet in height. Most of the digesters underground, but to give you an idea of how big the digesters are, if you notice my cursor, this is a 6-foot board right here. So you have about 10 to 20 feet of the digester above ground, and the remaining, most of it is below ground. So now the biogas that's produced by anaerobic digestion goes into jet type engines, and that generates power. And then the steam from those from this process also used to generate more power. And all the power generated from the biogas is generated at our own power plant. We call it the total energy facility. And here's an aerial shot of it. It's a 20 megawatt power plant. And basically this power plant runs the joint plant. The joint plant, the wastewater treatment plants, is essentially energy self-sufficient because it runs off the biogas produced from the digester. And the reason it's not 100% energy self-sufficient is from time to time, we have to take the power plant down for maintenance. If that weren't the case, this plant would be completely energy self-sufficient. Okay, so as we get more and more food waste into our system, either food waste slurry, we're producing more biogas than we can use at our power plant. And so what we've done, and starting in last November, we've been cleaning up that biogas to create vehicle fuel and selling it at a gas station that we have at the corner of Sepulveda and Figueroa. And I'll show you a quick aerial. So you notice a digester right here, and you'll see the alignment of the new underground biogas pipeline. And as we go north on Figueroa, notice the digesters right here. And it's going to go to what we call a biogas conditioning system. This system right here. And what this system is doing, the biogas that's produced from the digesters, about 60% methane. This system is going to take it from 60% methane to over 90% methane in concentration. That now makes it vehicle fuel, renewable fuel. And we store it in this tank. And then from there, it feeds to the existing gas station. Here's a ground shot of the biogas conditioning system. You kind of see how it goes from 60% methane to 90% methane. It does moisture removal, contaminant removal, and then remove the CO2. And we just want as pure as possible of methane or natural gas. Here's a close-up shot of renewable gas tank. And here's the gas station that's been at the corner at Sepulveda and Figueroa. We're partners with a company called Clean Energy. And historically, this compressed natural gas station was fueled by the natural gas pipeline. But starting in November, we started bringing in the biogas generated food waste at this fueling station. And at some point in 2021, this fueling station will be completely fueled by biogas produced from food waste. So then the last step is the solids that are left behind in the digesters. What do we do with it? So after 15 days, the digested solids are taken out. When they're taken out of a digester, they're about 2 to 3% solids, and most of it is water. So we don't want to truck all that water off site. It's money, it's energy. So what we do is we dewater it using a centrifuge. We take the material that comes out of the digester, the leftover material, we spin it almost like a spin cycle, and it takes it from like 2 to 3% solid to 30% solid. And that greatly reduces the amount of biosolids we have to take off-site. And here's a shot of what it looks like. After it's gone through the centrifuge, it produces what we call biosolids cake. And this is an actual shot from our joint plant in Carson. And we call it biosolid cake because it looks like crumble chocolate cake to us. And then we load it into trucks, the biosolids. And most of our biosolids, we compost with agricultural waste and we turn into a soil amendment. So how are we doing at the joint plant in Carson? The plant in Carson is taking about 300 tons per day of food waste slurry. We have about 8 haulers that have been bringing the food waste there. And you can notice we had a bit of a COVID dip, but it's starting to inch back up. And we're currently producing about 2,000, the equivalent of 2,000 gallons of gasoline from that 300 tons per day of food waste slurry. We can build out this system. Our infrastructure can handle up to 600 tons per day. And when we get to 600 tons, we should be generating about 5,700 gallons of gasoline per day, the equivalent energy of 5,700 gallons of gasoline per day. So as we build out, as we get more and more food waste, we're going to continue to produce electricity. We're going to completely fuel our existing compressed natural gas station with biogas from food waste. And as we get more food waste than the power plant or the CNG station can handle, maybe down the road, we would look into natural gas, injection into natural gas pipeline. That's all I got. Are there any questions? I was hoping we have questions as we went along. Genesis, any questions?
So far, none. You've left us all stunned.
Oh, I bored everyone.
No, I have one. Just came in. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we love questions.
And keep them coming. We love your questions.
And we'll turn on your camera.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, Basil, I think you covered everything. Good job.
Yeah.
No.
And I'll leave this final slide up for like a minute or so, so that you can write down the information if you need it. Oh, and also I'll have my poll set up. Let me launch my poll. So before you go, please take the poll. Okay, so let's go with the first question. With recent events in Dallas, if California were to freeze, would that prevent the anaerobic digesting from taking place? Like if the bacteria died, hence no methane, no generation of electricity, etc.
Well, the digesters are still going to operate. Hopefully it doesn't get that cold, but like Basil mentioned, at our total energy facility, we have what they call heat recovery steam generators, and that's using the heat from the gas turbines to boil water, create steam, and that steam is actually sent all throughout the facility and injected into the digesters. So the digesters have an active source of heat that's constantly being pumped in there to make sure that there's adequate temperature for that digestion to occur. So, hopefully it doesn't get that cold where the power plant shuts down, because then that would mean that the steam supply would be cut short. So hopefully not. I don't think we've ever had issues with temperatures being too cold to run the plant.
Yeah, I mean, the key is at the digest is it's like our body temperature. And as Will said, we have some treatment plants in the Antelope Valley, and it can get really cold in Lancaster. And those digesters, we make sure we're providing enough steam to keep it at our body temperature, 96 degrees. So and there are digesters throughout the nation, right? In cold climates, people use anaerobic digester. So yeah, that's not an issue. And if the food waste keeps coming, we have more than enough fuel to keep those digesters at 96 degrees.
Yeah, and one of the follow-up questions were, how does this compare nationwide?
Our digesters or our system? Our wastewater treatment system is pretty comparable nationwide. I mean, one of the neat things about what we do at the joint plant is that the digester there, the digesters at the joint plant are a centralized location where we handle all the solids for about 5 million people. So we have 6 other upstream treatment plants, but instead of having have digesters at 6 different locations, we've centralized it at this one location in Carson. That's why we have 24 digesters there. And it results in a huge cost saving instead of have to duplicate infrastructure, 6 other locations. And then we get all this energy at one location that we can run the power plant. So that's pretty unique. Most other jurisdictions and cities and countries don't have like such a slick system where they can centralize solids processing and wastewater treatment.
Okay, cool. And just a reminder, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A feature. It's located at the bottom of your screen, or if you're on a smartphone or a tablet, it'll be at the top right-hand screen. That way I can kind of get to your question quicker.
Or raise your hand. We'll take.
Raise your hand. Yeah, that way your question doesn't get lost in the chat. Okay, we have one question from Queen Fen. Would you like to unmute yourself?
Oh yeah. So first, what does the facility smells like?
What does this?
What was that?
Go ahead.
Smell like.
Well, I couldn't hear the question actually. I think she cut off. I don't know if you guys.
What does the facility smell like?
Well, the joint plant smells like there is really no smells. And that's one of the reasons why we're really pushing for anaerobic digestion of food waste. And again, the SB 1383 is trying to divert the organics away from landfills, because even in a well-run landfill, there's still a little bit of methane that is emitted through the surface of the entire landfill, which is a huge area. So by taking the organics and sending it over to our wastewater treatment plant, all of our digesters are completely sealed. So any gas that is produced from the anaerobic digestion process, all of that is completely sealed. So there is no methane or short-lived climate pollutants that can be emitted to the atmosphere. So all that's collected and then sent over to the joint plant, and some of it now to our biogas conditioning system. For our Point of Hills MRF, like Basil mentioned, the entire building is completely sealed. There's odor control system, there's dust suppression. So on the outside, you really shouldn't be smelling any odors at all. Now, if you were to visit our material recovery facility in person, and you were to go inside, you definitely get the smell of refuse, but there's a lot of activity going on there, and it's really all kind of one smell. And if you've been in the industry long enough, there is that smell of solid waste. But for the most part, if you're outside of our facilities, there really should be zero odors that can be detected.
Thank you. And I'll plug, I think next month we have a virtual tour of our Point of Hills material recovery facility. And you can also go on our YouTube channel and get a virtual tour of the complete joint plant. Because one of the things we didn't talk about is we spent like $70 million in odor control for our, what we call our primary wastewater set. So the primary tanks are completely covered. They're under a vacuum, and even the secondary step. And you can either go on our website and learn more about that. And then we have bio-trickling filters that scrub whatever air comes off the primary and secondary wastewater treatment process. So these are shameless plug. You either go to our YouTube page and see some of the previous tours, or you can tune in next month for a tour of the MRF, where you can learn more about the material recovery facility.
And I will put the link in the chat so that you can see our schedule of our upcoming tours as well.
Or the YouTube channel. Yeah.
Or the YouTube channel. But preferably we'd like to do this live so that you can ask questions. Okay, so the next question is, are the biosolids a combination with wastewater?
So in terms of digester, and again, in the wastewater treatment process, in the primary and what we call secondary step, we settle things out of the wastewater. Those are sludge, those go into the digester, and then we mix that with food waste slurry. And Will can talk more about the percentages between wastewater solids and food waste slurry that go into our digester.
Yeah, it took us a couple of years to get the formula right, but we started this process with I guess a demonstration project a couple of years ago to really find how much of this food waste our digesters can handle. Because again, this was an existing wastewater treatment plant already designed to just really treat traditional wastewater. So we wanted to make sure that first we can actually prove the feasibility, that it wouldn't upset the entire treatment process. So we started off slow with bench scale testing, then we started ramping up a little bit of food waste more and more. And we figured out that the sweet spot for these digesters is about 62 tons of diverted food waste per day, or that equates to about 83 slurry tons. And if you want to compare that to the entire feedstock of the digester, it's about 10% food waste solids compared to the rest of the stuff that's coming in, and 30% on a volume basis compared to the rest of the volume that's coming into the digester. So with that, you can make sure that the food waste gets digested in the appropriate amount of time, which is about 13 to 15 days of hydraulic retention time. Make sure all the bugs have enough time to kill all the bacteria. And also, one of the great benefits of co-digestion in these anaerobic digesters is that once you put in this food waste, it's really like technically food for these digesters. And we were able to double the amount of digester gas that's produced from each of these digesters that are co-digesting food waste.
Okay, so then the next question was, where was it? Oh, this is a good one. Do you service Pasadena or the San Gabriel Valley?
Our member cities, so we provide service for 78 of the 88 cities in LA County, and Pasadena and San Gabriel Valley cities are within our service area for our wastewater. And in terms of solid waste, it's really a function. So if you live in Pasadena or any of the San Gabriel cities, your wastewater, minimally your wastewater solids winds up in the plant in Carson. Um, but you also, if your hauler could bring their material to our Point of Hills MRF or our landfill. We have Shoal Canyon landfill and Calabasas landfill. So we do provide services for those areas. And the mayors of the respective cities, Pasadena, San Gabriel Valley City, they sit on our board of directors. They're our governing body. So.
Okay, and how do the consumers have access to the compost? Or can the consumers have access to it?
At this point, when we create the compost, it's usually one of two locations, either Tulare Lake, which is in Kings County, or Inland Empire. And usually we work with farmers and other entity. I'm not quite sure how a member of the public could get the compost. I think for the Inland Empire facility, I think you'd have to reach out to the Inland Empire facility. It's a partnership between us and Inland Empire, and then you can find out if they have specific programs to help consumers if they want compost or soil amendments. Yeah.
Okay, next question. Oh, and if you haven't, filled out the poll, please do so. All right, next question. How do you know how much waste a business produces?
I think there are surveys that are done periodically, and Will can jump in. So I think there's different surveys that I think Cal Recycle, the agency that regulates this field, that they will do waste studies. And then from time to time, our agency will do waste studies of what comes into different loads. So I think that's where those numbers come from. But Will, I don't know if you can add more to
Yeah,
that.
Cal Recycle definitely tracks how much waste is generated from each jurisdiction. For example, any waste that comes into our facilities, we have to track and we measure and monitor exactly how much. So like Basil mentioned, Cal Recycle also has a waste characterization study that they perform every couple of years. And that's how we know that there's 33% organics in our total waste stream. There's 4,000 tons per day of food waste that's generated per day. So we do have a baseline level of kind of how much waste we are generating. So that's what they're using in these regulations. So if you remember the couple of slides, the targets and the regulations are based off of certain years and those volumes. So for example, we need to reduce it by 50% compared to 2014 levels. So what we would be doing is we'd go back to 2014 levels, look at the waste there, how much we generated in organic waste in 2014, cut that by half, and then that's going to be our next goal for the year 2020 or 2025.
And Cal Recycle is the statewide agency in charge of recycling and resource recovery for those who.
Okay, next question is how is food waste gathered from the restaurants and the grocery stores?
Will, you want to take that
So,
one?
so right now, most of the material that we get from, at our wastewater treatment plant, at joint plant, as well as the MRF, is from source separated food waste. So again, it's restaurants, maybe some schools, grocery stores. So it really takes a dedicated route of collection. So it really depends on the hauler and the agreement that they have with the businesses. So for example, if you're a business and you have a lot of food waste, or a grocery store and you have a specific bin that you're discarding all of your spoiled vegetables, spoiled food, that is going to be picked up. And then obviously that bin is going to have a relatively clean source separated waste stream that we can then accept over at our facility. So if you want to talk about, let's say, residential services, like for example, my own personal trash service, we only have black, blue, greens. And there is no dedicated bin for my food waste. All that stuff is going into the black bin. So there is no dedicated route. So right now the regs and the efforts really trying to target businesses like restaurants and grocery stores, because that's where the majority and the bulk of this organic waste is. And it's relatively easy to separate that right now. If we want to eventually have even more stringent regulations and more aggressive goals that are going to be targeting residential waste streams, then we may end up seeing that there's going to be more of an effort to ask all of us as residents to split up and really clean up separate the organics away, separate from the rest of our waste. But that again is going to take a lot of work, and it's really incumbent upon the pre-processing facilities, because like we showed earlier at our DOTA facility, that machine is able to separate the organics from the inorganics. And then on a good day, maybe we pull out 5 to 10% of basically inorganic waste from that clean waste stream. But if that were to jump up to 50 or 60% contamination, the equipment really would have to be beefed up, or a separate technology altogether, because it is very, very difficult to separate, as you can imagine, a little bit of food from, wrapped inside of wrapper, or, completely buried in plastic, glass, forks, and other utensils.
Okay, awesome. And that answered the next questions that we had about having a food waste program with residential homes. So our next question is, what is the total capacity for the Carson facility?
So the Carson facility has a maximum capacity at this point of 600 tons per day of food waste slurry. And the facility in the Pointed Hills MRF has a maximum capacity of 165 tons per day of source separated food waste. And to put those numbers in context, as I mentioned earlier, every day in LA County, we're throwing out about 4,000 tons of food waste. So you can see that the Carson facility or the Pointed Hills MRF are really like less than 10% they can handle less than 10% of the food waste being generated in LA County. So part of the reason we do these tours is to let our member cities know that we have this finite low cost option right now, but it's finite. So it'll be first come, first serve. And we want to make sure people take advantage of it, because the next increment is probably going to be more expensive for cities and for LA County to build. Because we had a huge head start, because we already had digesters, we already had the MRF. We just had to add in a couple more facilities, like the biogas conditioning system and the pipeline, to turn this around into a resource.
Okay, and someone had asked, my understanding is that a residential hauler such as Athens separates after pickup. Do they then deliver to you?
Is that Athens? Athens comes to our facilities. I think there was.
Athens currently is not a joint plant customer. We don't receive any slurry from Athens, but I'm not sure if they currently discard or take a material over to our MRF, which I wouldn't be surprised if they do. But it really depends on their process and I can answer if they bring their material to our facilities or not.
Athens is on our list.
Oh, so Athens is one of the folks that come to. Yeah, I wasn't sure. We have 8 or so haulers. So they drop in and out. So I wasn't sure. So so Athens is one of our haulers.
Okay, so our next questions talk about our natural gas. So what are practical examples of what 5,700 gallons of gas fuel in daily life? For example, how many cars can that fuel, or how many homes can it heat on a daily basis?
So you want 5,000, 5,700. So it's a gasoline equivalent. So divide, if a typical gas tank is what, 35 gallons, so divide the 5,700 by 35, and you get basically the number of cars you could fill up. Is that about right, Will? Correct me if.
Yeah, it depends on the vehicle, obviously. Larger Class 8 trucks can use up to 50, 60, 70 gallons. A small light passenger like Honda Civic CNG, that can be 10, 15 gallons. So it really depends on the size of the tank. In terms of the conversion over to house home heating, that's I can throw out some numbers out there. Basically, each household uses about 66 million BTU, or 66 MMBTU. And the conversion of that is basically 1 to 8. So let's say a house uses 8 GGEs or something like that. That'd be a rough ballpark calculation of how much you would use on a daily basis. But again, that also varies greatly depending on your climate. And so Southern California, we're not using as much natural gas for heating purposes as the rest of the country.
And for the car one, I always tell people we can handle about 150 cars, 160 cars per day, fully fill up the tank with the power. If it was the equivalent of like just regular old gasoline, 150, 60 cars a day.
So the new biogas conditioning system, the goal and the target is to be able to completely offset all the utility gas that it's currently using from SoCal Gas to be replaced with our renewable natural gas. And just basically for size perspective, that station currently is dispensing about 13 to 1400 gallons GGEs per day. So that gives you an idea of how much gas we're going to be producing to be feeding that to be feeding that station.
Okay, so the next question was, is the vehicle fuel used by the city or county, or is it sold to the public? And if sold, what is the price?
So the station is publicly accessible. The district owns the station and it's operated under contract by Clean Energy. Clean Energy is a very large national company that owns and operates a lot of other CNG fueling stations. So the price is set by Clean Energy. It's, you can go on their website, you can go online to find out what the price is, but it's relatively, it's driven by the market. The districts uses that fueling station as well for our own vehicles. So we do have a large fleet of CNG or RNG vehicles, so we use that. But again, any person or vehicle can go into that station and fuel up.
Is there a possibility to start fueling biogas to more gas stations in the future?
That's the goal. So that's more so talking about the RNG market as a whole in the state of California. So technically every single drop of CNG that's fueled into a vehicle is technically coined renewable natural gas. And either it's coming from actual renewable sources or it's actually imported from out of state. So there is already a large effort in pushing renewable natural gas into the pipeline and using the pipeline as a distribution network. So there are a lot of, there are a handful of projects that are already currently doing that. So whether it's coming from anaerobic digester gas or dairy applications, there is already renewable natural gas in the system.
Okay, next question. Does where disposal come to you guys? That's my hauler. I will say I don't know the exact answer to that, but I do know that they were in attendance at our last food waste presentation. So they've been here. I don't know if they bring anything though.
Yeah, I think that's where Habib would know, because like Will
Yeah.
said, they're the haulers that come into the facility. I'm not aware. I don't think they bring any slurry to the joint plant, but I'm not sure if they go to the Puente Hills MRF.
Yeah. So the next question is, was the MRF designed to include the slurry process, or was it retrofitted?
The original design did not have the DOTA and the food processing kind of carve out in mind. It was never part of it. The location that the DOTA system occupies right now was originally basically earmarked for storage and extra traffic flow, or basically accessibility for the trucks coming in and out. But it turned out to be a great spot because we can still manage that operation without affecting the original operation of the MRF, even though it is a very, very busy, environment. So, we take a lot of precaution to make sure all the attendants and the truck drivers are safe with high-vis vests and basically to make sure that no one ever, hopefully has an accident or gets into an accident. But yeah, we put the location of the DOTA on the right-hand side. And to be honest, with about 30 tons per day that we're processing, that's a couple of trucks coming in per day. And that's compared to, hundreds of trucks actually coming in on the regular business side. So adding this food waste processing facility kind of on the side really didn't impact the overall operation too much.
Next question was,
I was just
Oh.
going to add, and the facility, when it's designed to handle up to 4,400 tons of waste per day of all kinds of waste. And the food waste is, as Will said, it's a subset of what it can handle.
and how much did it cost?
Which the DOTA system?
It said, how much did it cost for the entire plant?
I can't recall that off the top of it.
I mean, I can give you some ballpark figures. Overall, our overall food waste program so far has been about $16 million. The DOTA machine, you can ballpark up to, I think it was about $2 million. The new pipelines that we installed were 2.5. The biogas conditioning system was $3 million. The slurry receiving facility was a couple $1 million there. So all in all, we're almost at around $16 million. Now, we were fortunate enough to apply for and win and receive 2 grants from the state of California, one from the California Energy Commission and another from Cal Recycle. And that was able to offset some of the costs at a tune of $6.5 million to offset, the total cost. So it's expensive infrastructure, and that's why the industry and Cal Recycle is really trying to motivate a lot of other companies, municipalities, or basically facilities to really start early, because we started this food waste demonstration project back in 2014. And again, it takes a lot of work, research from a lot of people to make sure that this even works and get it up to a commercial scale. So we've only recently completed construction of our first slurry receiving facility. We're almost done with the second one. But again, it has taken many, many years, and especially in California, there's a lot of permitting requirements from the AQMD, from stormwater requirements. So there is a lot of work that's involved. And in order for us to reach those targets and those goals of diverting 50% from 2014 levels, it's going to take a lot of work, and there needs to be a lot more infrastructure that's set up to be able to handle those types of numbers.
Okay, so the next questions talk about the plastics. So what do you do with those plastics that are taken out of the slurry?
So the rejects talking about the DOTA machine over at our MRF, the first stage bioseparator is what you saw, with all the plastic film. That stuff gets landfilled. It's already contaminated. There really is no other beneficial use for it. The rejects from the second bioseparator, kind of downstream, where it was always kind of mushy already, we actually take that stuff and we send that back into the DOTA machine. We rerun it, where a lot of that gets polished out again and it gets produced into a slurry. So we try to reuse and utilize as much of the material as possible. Basil could talk a little bit more about the biosolid side, but once the slurry gets over to our joint water pollution control plant, most of the stuff is what we call biodegradable, or you can convert that into energy. So most of the material that is sent over the joint plant gets completely eaten up by the bugs. It gets converted into methane, and whatever can't get converted is either left at the bottom of the digesters, or it gets converted into biosolids. So after every couple of years, about 5 or 6 years, again, we have a total of 24 digesters, and these things are massive. They're about 4 million gallons in size and volume, and you saw how big they were. And there is no magic formula to remove the grit or the inorganics. If it goes into the digesters and it can't be broken down or digested, it just simply remains at the bottom of the digester. So every couple of years, again, we pump it down, we take it down for maintenance, and at the bottom of the digesters are literally tons of the grit. So there's glass, plastic, metal, whatever it makes it through. Obviously, they're not big chunks, because hopefully the customers that we accept slurry from, and even the material that we bring from our DOTA, should be relatively clean if it meets our specification. So to meet our specification, you can't just be sending us, slurry that has a lot of contaminants. We have tight specifications to make sure that it meets pH, electrical conductivity, contamination rates of less than 1%. So really, it has to already be relatively clean, because if it doesn't, and it's not clean, we just have a lot more work on the back end to physically remove all the stuff from inside the digesters.
Next question is, this is a good one. What tests are analyzed for the food waste samples, and how are those results used?
So our food waste samples or food waste slurry samples that we accept over at the joint plant, we test for, I think it's around 2 or 3 dozen parameters. And I couldn't tell you every single one of them, but it's an entire list of specs that we test for. And obviously we're not going to be running an expensive lab test for every single load that comes in, but we do test for pH and electrical conductivity for every load that comes in, because those are the most imperative to make sure that it doesn't sour, what we call sour, or destroy the biological process inside of our digester. The reason why we hold on to those 1 liter bottles and we store them in refrigerators for every single sample that comes in is because we have to also hold our customers accountable to make sure that they're holding up their end of the deal and meeting the specification. So periodically we can go back into the refrigerator, we can randomly pull out any sample, we can run the test for the entire list of parameters to make sure that our customers are still meeting the specification. So far, everyone has been, we haven't had any issues. Everyone's been doing, a great job in meeting the specification. And obviously we've been, running the program for a couple of years without, souring a digester. So we, again, we test for pH and electrical conductivity every single load. Everything else we hold on to. And the main effort there is really to make sure that it doesn't affect our digesters, because that is of paramount importance. If we were to take out one of those digesters, again, we're treating sewage and biosolids for an entire 78 different cities. So there really is no room for error, even if one of those 24 or 22 that are currently in service were to go down.
All right, thank you. The next question is, what happens to the CO2 that is removed during the biogas purification process?
So the biogas conditioning system is only taking a small fraction of the overall digester gas supply created from all of the digesters. We're taking about 400 SCFM, standard cubic feet per minute, of digester gas, while the entire joint plant is actually producing 6,000 SCFM. So as you can tell, it's a really small fraction. So when we take 400 SCFM of raw digester gas, we send it over the biogas conditioning system. The membranes basically filter out, keep the methane, and then reject much of the other gases. And it's primarily CO2, like this question is asking. That CO2 is then sent back in another pipeline, which we call the tail gas line, along the same alignment going south on Figueroa back to the joint plant's gas supply. So even though we're extracting most of the methane from the 400 SCFM of that raw digester gas, there's just a little bit of CO2 that we're sending back to the plant. So by the time that little bit gets sent back into the plant supply, gas supply, and it's diluted, the facility, or the total energy facility, can barely notice a difference. So all of that is still combusted ultimately at the total energy facility.
All right, next question, thank you. What are the membranes made of that refine that biogas?
I don't know the exact construction of the membrane, but again, the system is built by Tetra Tech. It was built and the manufacturer is Unison. And yeah, I couldn't tell you the manufacturer of the membranes. I'm not sure.
If they leave an email address, we could find out and send it to you.
Okay, cool. So next question, how much water is used at both locations?
I can start with the MRF. The answer is it depends. For the most part, depending on it really heavily depends on your feedstock. So you can imagine if we get a truckload of potatoes or very fibrous like celery stalks, that's going to be relatively drier. Versus if you get an entire truck of tomatoes, for example, that's going to have a lot higher liquid content, lower solids content. So at our MRF, typically we don't have to use too much dilution water once we send the SSO, source separated organic food waste, into it, it's already, at our target thickness or solids content. And again, our slurry total solids percentage that we're looking for is anywhere around from 13 to 15% solids, the rest liquids. And the reason for that is because you want to be able to have it loose enough or thin enough so that we can transport it using pumps. Because anything thicker than that, then it really bogs down the pumps and it's really hard for you to move the material from one tank to another. As far as once it goes into the joint plant, I don't think there really is any extra water that's used. Again, if it's already meeting our specification at around 15%, we just simply feed it directly into our digesters, and then it gets co-digested with the rest of the wastewater treatment process. And there really is no extra water that we have to add at that point.
All right. So next question. How many plants do you have in total?
Wastewater treatment plants, we have 11 wastewater treatment plants throughout LA County. We have 2 in Antelope Valley, 2 in Santa Clarita, and then the other 7 are in the southern parts of LA County.
Okay. Next question. Are your digesters subject to spilling? And if they are, what do you do to prevent this?
I think the simple answer would be no, but
No, I don't think we've had spills from the digesters. Again, there's a lot of control mechanisms in place. Our wastewater treatment plant is constantly monitoring the temperatures, the level, thickness, so that in case there's any, impending disaster or out of normal operation specs, I guess, we can put a stop to it. So there really shouldn't be any issues of it spilling. Again, the gas is controlled. We're constantly collecting the gas. We all constantly know the levels, and they have the ability to stop feeding sludge or sludge and material into the digesters in case the level gets too high. But throughout the plant, whether it's at our solid waste facilities or if it's at our wastewater treatment plant at the slurry receiving stations, we always have a very, very robust spill prevention control plan. There's proper, shower stations, eye wash stations in case there are spills. But again, in case there ever is a spill, we make sure that there is no material that leaves our site.
Okay, thank you. All right, so next question. Can you explain exactly how we get the energy from food waste and why doubling the tons of food waste you take in almost triple the amount of energy you produce?
Well, food waste is still food, and it still has a lot of inherent energy left in its current form. It's just like how when we eat, we get food from energy. I'm not trying to downplay that, but the reason why we ended up getting, and it's doubling the gas. So if we end up, again, we put in 62 tons or 83 slurry tons into these digesters, it doubled the amount of gas. And it's beyond me to try to explain that, but basically the bugs inside of the digesters are able to really capitalize on the organic material that's coming in and is able to really, really efficiently break that material down. Now, if you compare that over to a landfill, if you were to put some organic waste into the landfill, it's going to be weeks, if not months, for that to start decomposing, to start producing methane that ends up, making its way over to a power plant after it's collected. But in a wastewater treatment plant, when it's in a controlled environment like an anaerobic digester, where it's temperature controlled, it's completely sealed, we get that energy conversion a lot quicker, which is why we are really pushing for food waste co-digestion inside of anaerobic digester.
Okay, Genesis, we're at 10 o'clock. We're going to still take questions, but we want to tell the people who have to take off, thank you for joining us. This video will also be on our YouTube channel, and to spread the word. We have great low-cost infrastructure, but it's a finite infrastructure. It's a drop in the bucket. It's the cheapest leg right now to help meet this Cal Recycle state requirement in terms of organic diversion. So thank you, folks. And this is the after show. This is the encore of the Will Chen Master Trio. So go ahead, Genesis, if you have more questions.
Yeah, this is the encore album
Yeah.
from Eminem. So, all right, next question. What is the business model for the entire operational value chain? Is it a subsidized service or something that the waste generator / relevant stakeholders have to pay for?
Could you repeat the question for me, Genesis?
Is this a subsidized service or something that the waste?
Okay, so all right. So basically, on our wastewater side, the solid waste, the fee, it's paid for by tipping fees. So when a hauler comes in, so we get no tax revenues. When a hauler comes in, they pay a tipping fee, and those monies are used to fund our operations for our solid waste management. And so what Will is doing, and the folks in solid waste and wastewater are doing, by generating biogas from it, we'll generate an additional revenue stream that allows us to keep our operating fees down. Because at the end of the day, we're here to serve our cities and the public. So our fees come from basically tipping fees at the scale, or when the slurry goes to the joint plant in Carson, there's a fee there as well. That's about $27 per ton, which is the cheapest around. And then whatever revenues you generate from the energy production, that goes into keeping our costs down for the public that we serve.
I do want to mention that there are two separate, basically, revenue streams and expense streams. So on our wastewater treatment side, that is completely rate driven, and basically residents pay into that. On your property tax bill, you'll see a small line item for sanitation districts. And that is completely separate from our solid waste side of things. So the tipping fees for the waste that comes in, that's all solid waste. The energy revenue that we generate from the biogas conditioning system, that's all solid waste. So we make sure that there is no mixing of funds. So all of the infrastructure that we spend, the $16 million that I mentioned earlier, all that stuff is going to be funded by basically the food waste program itself and the solid waste tipping fees to build all the infrastructure for that. So, the revenue that we're going to be receiving from the biogas conditioning system and the renewable energy credits associated with that RNG is really going to go back into solid waste to be able for us to, first of all, cover the expenses that we've already paid for. So return on investment, and then also for future projects. So in case, CalRecycle really does stick with these regulations and these targets, we're probably going to have to build out more infrastructure, because again, our facility is going to be able to handle about 600 tons per day. But like we mentioned before, there's 4,000 out there. So unless, a lot of other facilities and receiving stations and pre-processing facilities are constructed and built, there's really a lot of catching up to do. So we'll see where the market goes.
And CalRecycle is going to stick with the regulation. It is the law. It's just a matter of how quickly you roll it out.
So I see there's a question from Vanessa. Hi, Vanessa. We work together for our HHW program, but her question is, if you see a lot of edible food coming in, do you provide resources to the hauler to encourage food generators to donate instead of dispose, considering a significant amount of people that lack access to nutritious food? So we don't have any food rescue programs that we manage or operate at the district, but I can tell you that we've worked very closely with someone like the LA Regional Food Bank, because we have basically had to work with them for part of our grant requirements. And there is a lot of effort put forward in food recovery. There's a lot of organizations around that work directly with restaurants, that work directly with grocery stores, to make sure that anything that is still able to be used and recovered as edible food does so. So the challenge with food recovery is that you have a timeline. Just like anything or any product that you see in the grocery store, there's an expiry date or a best use by date. And the moment that surpasses different tiers, that means, okay, they take it off the shelf, they put it into let's say, you're seeing these bargain grocery stores now, like a second life, a chance for these products. Now, if it passes another tier, then it goes into a food recovery program, and then that gets distributed. But even after that, there's still a timeline that takes. So someone like the LA Regional Food Bank, they have routes, they have refrigerated trucks, they have large storage facilities that have freezers and refrigerators to make sure that the stuff is kept at an operable temperature and gets distributed as fast as they can. Because there is, again, I think LA especially, there are a lot of food deprived communities out there. And there are a lot of organizations that do try to salvage any and all available food that's out there.
Yeah, and to summarize, I think I said earlier, it's tiered. First thing, if we can recover that and get it to a food bank, that's the highest and best use. The stuff that cannot be recovered, can't get to a food bank. That's where we come in, or composting comes in. But first and foremost, try to feed people. Let's not waste it.
Yeah,
So next,
So I also want to say that sometimes the pictures that we show of our food waste that's delivered over to our MRF sometimes might look like, hey, you can just grab it out and eat it directly. And again, it may seem like that, but again, that's after, hopefully that's after, all that salvageable has been taken out already and rescued.
all right, so next questions. How do our biosolids differ from the biosolids produced by Hyperion?
There should be, and I'll let Will, it should be the same type of biosolids. And I don't think food waste changes the composition that much in terms of what we get in terms of biosolids.
No.
And are those biosolids leaving the digester safe enough to use on edible crops and not just for animal feed?
Our biosolids when we take it to our Tulare Lake composting facility, we create grade A biosolids, and we create and then use as a soil amendment. I think it's good for edible crops.
All right, and the next question, they have to deal more with the residents. So how come some cities in Central California, Northern California, and other states collect food waste from residential areas already? And when do you think our areas will start to have food waste carts?
That's a good question. And, it's another one of those, it depends type of answer. It really depends on the haulers. So again, I'll kind of draw on my personal experience. We currently only have 3 separate bins. And so there is no separation from specifically food waste or organic waste from my black bin material. Now, someone out in Riverside County, San Bernardino, who's in CR&R's kind of area of collection, they tell their customers to go ahead and put and scrape off all their plates and organic food directly into their green bin. But that's only because CR&R has their own organics processing facility. They're able to take that green waste, that organic waste mixed in with green waste into their dry digesters, which is a completely different operation that we're operating, but they're able to handle that. So it really depends on your end location of where that material is going. And before that, is there any pre-processing equipment that's able to handle that?
All right, and our next question, is this process competitive with other similar businesses?
Our food waste recycling process, it's being driven by California's desire to make sure is to keep organics out of landfill. And what we're doing now is competitive. Our tipping fees are around $70 a ton at the Point of Hills MRF. The slurry drop-off fee is about $27 per ton, and that's the lowest around. So it's very competitive.
In the solid waste industry in California, it's all market driven. So again, the rates are very, very competitive. So if we were to set a rate that was abnormally high, we would just lose all of our customers because there are other facilities that are cheaper. And that really to the consumer is great because we've been able to keep the rates down. Now, if it's somewhere else and we've visited sites out of state, their trash collection bills can be in the hundreds, at least $100 for that, because it just takes a lot more time and effort, or it's run by, maybe one organization or company. But because it is an open market and it's competitive, That's why we're able to have, for example, my trash bill on a monthly basis is about $20.
All right, so our last few questions are very similar. And if anyone has any additional questions, now's your chance. So what can we do as an individual to help with the environment and recycle food waste? How can we positively contribute to zero waste in everyday life?
That's a really good question. And I think, I've been in the industry for a while now, and you compare yourself in our society to, I always compare myself to other countries when I go visit. And I want to say that other countries are a lot more cognizant of that. Food waste recycling and recovery actually has been around in the European countries for a lot longer than we've been trying to push for. For example, if you go visit Japan, they are extremely good at separating their waste stream. They have like 5 or 6 different, trash cans and different types of waste streams that they have to discard, and there's fines. There's heavy fines if they don't adhere to that. But over here, I think there's a lot of room for improvement. But again, it comes down to a personal choice in what we practice. I've always tried and made an effort to try to produce as little as waste as we can just in my own household, kind of on a daily basis, because it's very easy to just go out for one meal and you're generating a whole waste basket full of trash, and that's just for one meal. And did we really have to do that? Can we really recycle, and can we reuse a lot of this material? It really requires a large shift in culture for us to get to that point.
Yeah, and I would add that, when I've gone to like Finland and Sweden, it's built into in the kitchen. There are like 6 or 7 bins, and it's not onerous. And they're just so used to segregating the stuff. But like Will said, it really it's a willingness whether we want to do it. And so one of the programs the sanitation district is kind of partnered with is called Grades of Green, where they go into schools, and especially when the kids were in school, and really and the schools compete against each other and see who can get closest to zero waste at the school. So these kids learn concepts like composting and so on, and bring those ideas home. And when they grow up, hopefully the environment will change, because we just can't keep burying stuff. There's only so much space. So it's a cultural shift. It's a mindset. And I don't think it's onerous if we get into the right frame of mind. So.
Okay, awesome. And I think that was our last question. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Remember, if you want to bring source separated food waste to our facility, please, I put the email down in the chat below. That's Habib Karat, HKHARRAT @lacsd.org. For food waste slurry, Will Chen is your guy. That's WCHEN @lacsd.org. And then if you have any other questions, please email us at info@lacsd.org. And again, thank you for joining us. And if you're interested in our other tours, we have lacsd.org/tours, and you can see us on the next one.
And if you have a group that would be interested in food waste tour, we can do that. And just keep in mind, we want people aware that our facilities are there, but it's less than 10% of the demand or the need for this county. So get it while it's there. So with that, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and let's try to get to a zero waste type world.